I am Dale, the Magnificent.
So our Dale puppet is featured on the Disturbing Psychic Readings video, Hunter's newest video on the Papa Meat channel. When we were approached to build Dale, Hunter came at us first with a full-color illustration of what he wanted Dale to look like. When we started this project, we were approaching it as just a traditional hand puppet. As we were building this guy, we were also building Oswald, the animatronic talking zombie head. The more we were kind of playing with that and seeing how much fun and expressive the animatronic was, it just seemed like a fun way to approach Dale. So when we get the artwork, we started with the construction of the box. With this, we 3D modeled the box so we had our measurements down, knew what the finished thing would look like before we started even cutting any wood. Once we have the model kind of nailed down, we start getting into cutting, measuring, building a full wood box. And at that same time, we're tackling the digital sculpture of Dale. Now, since we landed on an animatronic for Dale, doing him digitally is kind of the best way to go for us. Working with a digital sculpture, we can give our animatronic mechanic the files. He can build all the mechanics digitally as we are printing and generating the silicone skins. The mechanic that we've worked with before, Dave Penikas, is a veteran in the industry. He's worked on movies like AVP, Tremors, Starship Troopers, an amazing mechanic who we've worked with many times, but we really wanted that old school feel of a 1980s animatronic, using modern day 3D printing and nicer servos to really make this thing come to life and be modern, but still have that kind of 80s feel to it. Step one was start the sculpture and get it to where Hunter likes it and it looks like the illustration. So for that, we went to Andrew Martin, an amazing sculptor out of Canada, and we hired him to sculpt Dale's head. So once Andrew had sculpted the finished Dale head, he sent us the file. Obviously the mustache and the eyebrows and stuff we're attacking traditionally, so we lose those. And then we get our final Dale sculpture and we hand it over to the mechanic. Now he generates a core for us based on it being silicone and not like foam or something. We landed on a silicone skin. We don't want to do any maintenance on this thing for a while, so silicone is the most durable option. So how do we make a mold using this core and using the sculpture to print all this stuff out and generate a test skin to send to the mechanic so that he has a skin to work with also. So once we get the core back and once we have our sculpture, then we just go and we start building a giant block mold. Where are we going to be pouring the silicone in? How are we going to split this sculpture up so that the mold comes apart nice and easily? Seam lines and stuff can easily be hidden in the silicone patching later. For this sculpture, because it is such weird like giant lips that lock and it's just a very weird shape, we went with a 4-piece mold. So there's a seam line straight down his face and seam lines on the side and down the back of the head. So we design all this digitally, 3D print all this stuff, and then just go straight into 4-way fabric patterning of a hood on there. So we have fabric embedded in the silicone and then running our silicone. For the skin of Dale, we used EcoFlex 20, which we've used for a lot of our skins. It's a very flexible, very soft silicone. You really need the 4-way fabric embedded into that because it can tear. But we had kind of R&D'd earlier with Oswald, the talking zombie head, a good silicone that seems to work really well for mechanics. Then I went in and I kind of blocked out his torso, his arms. I was also given parameters of where the mechanical box, some of the servos have to live down in his chest. We had to have like a room for a box to live within there. Once I was given those parameters, we can create a shell of a torso that can fit around all the mechanics. I digitally built his torso and arms and then handed that over to costuming. For our costuming, we went to Why Not Productions, which is down south here in Colorado. They wanted to build the costume at their location. So again, with our digital files, we can email those to them. They can print the body and then build the costuming around that. Costuming and body is being built at one location. Mechanics are now being worked on and figured out in California. And we are generating the skins and the boxes and everything to kind of marry up the final Dale here. Once we run our EcoFlex 20 silicone skin with our 4-way fabric in, we can open up the molds, and now we just go straight into seaming. Now with EcoFlex 20, you have to start seaming right away. There is a window to where the silicone's kind of fresh, and it's still kind of like accepting more silicone on top, versus if you wait a few days, it's kind of settled down, and the silicone will just not want to adhere very well to itself. So we got to go straight into cleaning the silicone and patching it right away with just thickened up EcoFlex 20, detailing it out, making those seam lines impossible to see. And right after that, we just go straight into paint. Dale is an interesting paint job because we didn't design him, so we're working with fully finished colored artwork, so his colors are already established. But it's our job to bring it into a realistic realm. We brought in the pore textures, we brought in sculpturally the realistic things, but now it's painting the veins and the modeling and the freckling. Things like his lips, his big red lips. How to make those look like they're not just lipstick, making them look like they're just really red lips. That kind of stuff was really tricky to translate. Mariah Keirns, our lead painter here, patched it all and did a beautiful job painting this thing hyper-realistically, but still gives off the look and feel that the illustration did.
I think this needs to be
more browns too.
Less light. Right now it's like an Easter color. I think it needs to have more neon colors. Yeah.
Once we had built the box and we figured out how the torso is going to live in there, we sourced some molding, some kind of antique looking wood molding to go around it. We wanted to make the box a little bit more interesting and a little bit more of a vintage kind of 1920s feel to it. To do that also, we dug around in our collection of antique brass filigree and just little things we've collected over time to find just interesting accent pieces of curlicues and little dressings to just bring this box to look a little bit more intricate.
We just use little hex bolts.
Yeah.
Reverse them.
Reverse them, yeah.
So let's just hex bolt it in through that way. That'll give us a little flat, right? Have this be direct center. Measure this out and measure that center.
Okay.
And that center is right where this peak is, right?
Yeah.
Right there.
Okay.
Then we'll know we need our tray right there. Mm-hmm. This will encase with a house around it.
Yeah.
And then a slide. So that when you put the quarter in, because it doesn't work like that, but once you put a quarter in, it'll spit out the quarter.
Yeah.
Nick will be handed a quarter, and then Nick will feed you a card.
Once we found our pieces we were interested in, we made block molds using Mold-Max silicone to create resin copies of these so we can make a dozen of this piece or a dozen of that piece. And we casted a bunch of resin filigrees that we then adhered to sections of the box. We matched the paint to the artwork, we painted the box, and we did these gold accents everywhere to make it really eye-catching as a piece. Now the Dale lettering, we just modeled digitally, 3D printed those, body shopped them a little bit, and glued those up on top. And then we get our plexiglass cut, and we have our plexiglass windows. Now the box is just waiting for Dale to be put in. The mechanic locks down the movements. We knew we wanted the little worm eye to wiggle. And he kind of refines his animatronics to be where he thinks it's good, and then he ships it all to us.
It's heavy. That's the big boy.
Yeah.
Don't you drop that. Is it pretty bad?
It's gonna shake that whole box.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Now, once we get it, we take our finished silicone head. I mean, things like the hair can't be put on until it is adhered to the mechanic, because it is you're handling it, and it's kind of like a big floppy silicone bag. That would really mess up the hair. We get our mechanical head, and we drape over the silicone skin. And then with Silpoxy, we glue it in just a few areas. The 3D printed mechanical parts that are moving the rubber aren't sliding underneath, but pulling the eyebrows, pulling the lips, right? Just like Oswald, the zombie head. We needed to make this accessible for any repairs or maintenance or things that go wrong. The back of the 3D printed skull cap on the animatronic head is removable, so we had to glue a giant zipper into the back of the head to have access to all the servos and rods and things going on in the back. There were these issues with the power like cutting out, and his head would drop.
He keeps dying.
These keep turning red.
It was a little R&D of figuring out what was going on that was different there than what was going on here.
The receivers turn red.
And then it stops.
Yeah, it stops.
Hey, Adam.
Hi, Dave. Okay, first problem. The receiver LEDs turn red and all motion stops.
Huh?
All right, moving it all. There it is. Head's dying out. Head's dying out.
Pull the skin off and carefully so you don't bend the worm too badly.
Okay.
And check all the servo wires and see if something got nicked.
What it ended up being was the amount of weight and the amount of strain going on the servos as soon as the skin was glued on. It was drawing too much power.
I will get you new power supplies. I'm ordering them now, and I'll see if I can get them overnight.
The mechanic ended up giving us more power supplies and branching the wires out to kind of spread out the power being drawn to these servos. And as soon as we did that, that solved the problem. All right, well, he seems to be working okay now. It seemed to be just a power issue where it was just using way more than we thought it needed. Boom, done. That's all we wanted. Back to zero. We just had to undave it. So once we had resolved the power issue, then we can go into final assembly, putting him in the box. For the hair, we just go straight into hand punching the hair. We wanted it to look really nice and beautiful, so his mustache and his eyebrows and his little goatee are all fully hand punched hair.
I lay the hair kind of above and I'm just sliding it down. And I'm kind of fanning it out so I can see it a bit better.
We used yak hair, so it's a little bit scaled up than human, a little bit stiffer, so it kind of holds the shape. Then we can start diving into adhering the eyes and figuring out the final look. So when the Dale head is done, we can assemble our 3D printed body around our mechanics and then mount him onto a platform inside the case so we know where he lives. And at this point, we get our finished costume from Why Not Productions.
There you go. That's perfect for you. Fit you.
Beautifully hand-sewn velvet costume and his cape and even his little medallion that matches the artwork. And for the hands, we just did our digital sculptures, 3D printed block molds, cast armature wire inside of solid silicone hands. And then we can just pose the hands to be gripping the ball. So then once we have Dale fully assembled, his costuming, his body's put together, all the lights are plugged in, we've done our wire management. Which one do you want to do first? You want to do blue, you want to do green, or you want to do yellow? Brown? There's a lot of wires. We install a strip plug inside of the box, so it's all kind of protected and all in one location. We have our little controllers all Velcroed inside of there. And now Dale is ready to be performed and ready to be delivered. He was condensed to only require one puppeteer. That established how the remote control was built for Dale to be all on one remote. It's very hard with one. So it's really tricky, and it did require having to teach Nick and the guys at Meat Canyon how to operate them, charge the batteries, power them on. It is puppeteering, it is learning how to deal with the mechanics. So we chose to do a road trip to deliver Dale to Papa Meat and stick around to show how to perform him.
And with his mouth too, you can move it side to side.
Yeah.
I see. That's wonderful.
Once we got there, the next issue popped up with the mechanical head was the vibrations of the road trip. The amount of tiny screws in there, some of them were not Loctited. Loctite being a little like goo that you put on the screws that prevents them from vibrating out. So what we found is when we arrived from the road trip, a few of those screws rattled loose.
Hey, wait, hold on. Jake, we just lost left and right head. Was the window rig whipped around?
When we bring stuff out to be delivered or to go to set, we always have all the screws, all the hardware, everything we would need to do any repairs in any scenario in case something happens. We even bring backup servos, backup batteries, everything. That's just part of the job, is always being prepared for anything that can go wrong. Luckily, we had our zipper to unpeel the head. We had our access point to open up the skull, and we can spot that arm has become disconnected. This arm has become disconnected, and we can get in there with our Loctite and our replacement screws and reinforce all those and lock everything in place. Double check all the other screws and make sure nothing's loose. Then we can power on Dale and show how to perform this puppet and how to maneuver your fingers to get him talking while also moving the worm and having him look around. It's a very intricate puppet. But in the end, Dale the Magnificent is a wonderful animatronic puppet character that we are so proud of to bring to the Papa Meat channel. I think he came out beautifully. I think him compared to the artwork is pretty spot on. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.